This is the specialised Tarmac SL7. It's a bicycle that quite frankly needs no introduction to itself. I bought this bike 2 years ago, and the main reason I actually went for it is because I was struggling to find bikes in my size, which is a size 58, and I have no regrets in going for this one. This bike claims to be two bicycles in one, an aero bike and a lightweight bike. I'm going to be asking those questions as I go through bit by bit to see if it is that today. So this is my bike. It weighs 7.3 kilos with pedals and an extra 350 grams on top for the saddlebag. On the wheels I am using a GP 5000 28mm tyre set, and it has a Dura Ace group set to match. And most strikingly about this bike is the paint job, done by Gun Control. What do I think? Is it two bikes in one? Is it an aero bike? I would say yeah, it probably is an aero bike. It's got nice deep section wheels, it's got a nice aero handlebar, the tube shapes look like they're nice and aerodynamic, it tapers off towards the back of the bike, so I do think it is an aero bike. Is it as aerodynamic as the old Venge? I don't know, it's probably 1 or 2 watts off. It's got to be close for them to make those claims. I've never seen any data myself, so it's hard for me to say, but like I said, I reckon it must be very close. Is it a lightweight climbing bike? 100%. I mean, this bike right here, this is my one, 58cm frame, it weighs 7.3 kilos with pedals, all in. And I think that is a great weight, especially for a bigger bike, for someone of my size, and without the pedals that'll easily be at the bottom end of the weight range. It feels great going up hills, it certainly feels fast. I know weight doesn't actually make a major difference unless you're going over like 7%, but psychologically the weight of the bike does help a lot. What about for sprinting? When I sprint on this bike, it is super stiff. For me, it almost feels like the rear wheel is lifting off the ground when I sprint, and it makes the bike feel really great. It feels rigid as you're putting power through the bars. For me, like on the road, I can usually consistently put out about 1400 watts for 10 seconds plus over multiple intervals. That's how much I usually hit on my intervals, and the bike feels great for it. It feels like you can put all the power through the bike. There are so many great sprinters that have been winning on this thing. Peter Sagan rides it, although he hasn't been winning much recently. Sam Bennett was riding it, Fabio Jakobsen has been riding it, and Mark Cavendish has been riding it. And all three of those guys have been winning races. I'm not saying that's all down to the bike, but I'm sure the feel and the confidence that the bike gives in its geometry really helps with that. The first thing that I want to talk about is the tyres that it came with. It came with these, the specialised turbo cottons. Now these are a great looking tyre, they're a great handling tyre, they've got good grip, they've got good rolling resistance, especially when you look at tyre rolling resistance online. I love the tan walls on the side of them, but there is a reason why they're not on my bike anymore. And the main reason is punctures. I've got so many punctures with these tyres, it's ridiculous. I honestly had about 10 punctures in about 3 months with these tyres. So the first upgrade I did for this bike was to stick some GP 5000s on there. I went for 28mm width because I like the wider tyre now, and the tyre on the front wheel actually looks great. It almost fits better than the 26mm on the turbo cottons that I've got here. So I really like the width of the tyres. The rear wheel, there's less of an impact of aerodynamics, so I don't think the shape around the tyre matters so much, but on the front wheel the 28s actually look like they fit better than the 26s. The tyres also measure at 30mm on these wheels, so it shows that they're naturally a wider wheel themselves. These tyres are fast tyres, but there's no fast tyres if you're stuck on the side of the road changing your inner tubes because you got punctures. So for me, they're actually not a fast tyre because you're spending more time on the side of the road. And on the topic of tyres, let's go to the wheels. So for me, these are a great looking wheel set. You've got 50mm deep on the front, 60 on the back. I actually like the smaller on the front, the wider on the back. Gives it like a different look, it makes it look more interesting to me. Some people don't like it, but it's a personal taste. And I really like the shape of the front wheel as well. So it has this much more U-shape to it, so it's much wider. And do I think that this has helped with crosswinds? Yeah, I really think it does. So for me, I'm an 80 kilo rider and I ride these 50mm deep here, and to be honest, I've never ever been tugged in a crosswind on these wheels. So I think the stall angle for the wheel is probably really high, or if there is at all. I also think my weight does play a role in that, so a lighter rider might suffer a bit more. But because of the shape of this front wheel, I definitely feel like it doesn't ever pull on the bars at all. If it does blow you, it just blows you and you can stabilise really quickly, just account for it. And if the wind suddenly stops, it doesn't throw you off, you just feel comfortable on these wheels. There is a negative on this wheel set, and it's one thing I'm quite disappointed with, I think, as the bike came released. They're not tubeless. And for me, tubeless is the way forward. I run tubeless on my time trial bike. The rolling resistance is lower, your chance of getting a puncture is lower. So, and even if you do get a very small puncture like a thorn or something, the tubeless tyres are so good nowadays that they just seal up instantly. So that saves you a lot. And I've had a really good experience with tubeless. So I think it's a shame that you can't run tubeless on these wheels. When you look within the wheel itself, on the rim bed, it seems like there's a tubeless tape on there. So I feel like, and I've heard rumours before that they were going to make these tubeless, however they couldn't make the weight that they wanted. So it was going to make the wheels heavier, as they might have needed a bit more reinforcement. So I think they just kind of scrapped it halfway through. And to be honest, I would have rather a few more grams, even if it's 50 grams or so, and take away a bit of the feel of the acceleration of the wheels, just to have that tubeless ready setup. The geometry and the comfort of the bike. So this bike seems to really work well with my body shape, and I think Specialized has spent a lot of time using their body geometry data collection to find a better frame shape that fits more people, and I must say it's worked on this bike. I think this bike would fit most people. Even I've got a really high saddle, as you can see there, so it makes the drop to the handlebars really low, and I don't really get any back pain. I'm comfortable for like a 5, 6, 7 hour ride. It's genuinely not a problem. I think the wider tyre helps a little bit, but also I just think the bike putting you into a comfortable position that you can sustain is great. I think a lot of people get hung up on, race bikes, they're more aggressive and it's going to make them less comfortable. But actually, I think these race bikes are designed with the pros to be run for 5, 6 hours a day and be cycled on for a long time as well. So for me, I don't see there being any downsides to it being a more aero bike and a more of a race bike. I think it's still a very comfortable bike. The handlebars. The handlebars I really love on this bike. I like the wide flat tops. I feel like I like to hold that more than a circular bar. It just feels more comfortable. They've got the knobbles on the top, which feels like it just gives you a bit more grip to the handlebars. And I like the way it's set up as a normal bar and stem combination, just with the integrated cables running underneath. So the cables actually don't really go through the fork at all, through the headset stem. And it makes the bike really easy to work on. If you need to change something, if you need to adjust the height of the stem, it makes it much easier. If you want to adjust the hand of the bars, I think that's been a good feature, just because those integrated stems, I think they look great, they look clean, but for me this looks just as clean and just as smart with the adjustability as a secondary piece. I do wish, however, on the handlebars that this section from here to here was longer, just because when you rest onto your elbows on the bars, your triceps actually get tired quite quickly on this bike. Like this part here is fairly short compared to some of the more aero bars nowadays. I don't know how much that would have changed the geometry, so then Specialized might have done it for a reason, but when you want to stay dropped on top of those hoods, I think that they're a little bit short for that. The group set. The group set that came with this bike is the 91000 Shimano Dura Ace. Dura Ace is exceptional. There's been so many reviews, everyone knows it's great. It's a lightweight group set, and there's many reviews out there online, so I won't go into too much detail. Do you need the Dura Ace on this bike? No, you absolutely do not need Dura Ace. Every single component that you have costs so much more to replace for the same performance. It's just that a little bit lighter. So for me, DuraAce wasn't worth it. Another thing I don't like about the DuraAce system is that it's not compatible with the new one. So for me, it's just an electric motor moving the hoods across. Why can't you just put the new 12-speed GROUPSET on there, or the 12-speed cassette, and then it can you just download the software to say it's 12-speed, and then it can just convert to 12-speed and put a new chain on as well. I think they could actually integrate that feature really easily, and it will bring all the 11-speeders up to 12-speed. With that being said, I don't think there's many more benefits from going from 11 to 12-speed as well. So I'm still happy with the GROUPSET itself. The paint job. So I have a custom paint job on this bike. I'm lucky enough to have one. The bike originally came as red, as you can see a photo here. So it came as red. It's got a few specialised logos dotted around here and there. Makes it look more like a race bike, makes it look a bit busier. Still a good looking bike, but I didn't want a red bike. I wanted the blue bike. So I took my bike to these guys called Gun Control down in the Surrey Hills, just on the Hog's Back, and I think they have done a phenomenal job with the bike. So there's a few things that they did. They kept the UCI badge, which is really hard to do, and they kept the serial number underneath. Not going to show you that bit. The blue that they've gone for, or that they've made for me, so I found a blue online on an online picture, and they managed to match it perfectly. Another thing that I wanted is I wanted the bike to still look like it was almost a stock paint job. I didn't want it to be all out there, do too much. I wanted it to still look classy and tasteful. So that's why I went for this colour, and I kept the fade going from the top to the bottom of the bike, and as well as the fade, I also asked them to see if they can do a little pattern on the seat tube for me, so to almost similarly replicate the original paint job a bit more. And I really like what they've gone for. It's a bit bolder, but I really enjoy the way it looks. There's only a few things that I've done to this bike. The tyres we've already spoken about. The handlebar tape I've gone from black to white, but I've kept the Supercaz stuff because it's got a nice feel to it. It's nice and sticky. It's got a nice amount of cushion to it. So I think the Supercaz stuff is really great. I've also dropped the stem a little bit, so I'm still in the testing phase of that. I only did it recently. I've taken out 1 centimetre or a 1 centimetre spacer, and I really like that it comes with just this extra stem cap that you can apply, and you can just have the stem come up to the top and then just apply a normal spacer on top of it. So it's still hidden behind the main stem, so I think it's still aerodynamic, but it allows you to test a lower position before committing to it, before having to chop it. So I think that's a really big positive to this bike, and it's a feature that not a lot of other bikes have. And like I said, because the cables don't run through it, they just slide down a bit further into the headset, and there's space for it. It's easy to do. You don't need to be a professional bike mechanic to change the height of the stem on this bike. The second thing that I changed on this bike was the saddle. So I went for the specialised mirror saddle. A very expensive saddle, but for me it was worth every penny. The original Pro saddle that it came with, I actually really got along with that saddle. However, when my pubis and my ischium meet, I think I'll do a video on this in the future, but there's a little knobbly bit where they meet, where the bones have fused, and to be honest, on those harder saddles it kind of punches through the chamois, and that specific spot gets a lot of irritation. So the 3D printed saddle here eliminates that problem completely. But the actual shape of the saddle is the same as the power saddle that it came with. It's just a 3D printed top. It's a little bit heavier as well. I think it's about 100 to 125 grams heavier. So that's added some weight to the bike. So that brings it up to 7.3 kilos. I guess it would be 7.2 with the other saddle. So even lighter, and that includes the pedals. But I think 100 grams is a great price to pay for 6-hour comfort on the bike. I bought this bike December 2 years ago, so I've had a lot of miles on it since, probably about 12,000 miles on it now, so I've got some good miles going on there. And it was expensive then, and it's even more expensive now. I'm not going to put a price on because the prices might change and fluctuate, but wow, was it worth the money back then? only just. Is it worth the money now? No. I don't think any bike is worth that much, and I wouldn't justify paying the £14,000 price tag that it is nowadays. The downside to this bike is going down level to the ULTEGRA level, and this counts for the SRAM models as well. You do tend to miss out on things. The frame's 100 grams heavier, the wheels don't have bladed spokes, and those bikes are like £8,000–9,000 nowadays. So I think, once again, even for the ULTEGRA level, you're missing out on a lot of features that should come with that price nowadays. And with that cost, there are a lot of other bikes that are at a cheaper price range. For example, Canyons nowadays, even though they've gone up in price, you get a lot more features for the money. And even on the lower spec models, you still get a lot more features for the money as well, where Specialized only save the good features for right at the top. With price aside, is it a good bike? Absolutely. I mean, it is up there with the best of bikes in my opinion. So with these top spec, top level bikes nowadays, I mean, the differences between them are so marginal. But I really love this bike. I think it has more of a classical look while still being aerodynamic, while still being lightweight, and a lot of bikes are missing that nowadays. So for example, the Trek Madone has deeper tubes, the Canyon Aeroad also deeper tubes, the Pinarello has more wavy shapes to it, and I think these are beautiful bikes, don't get me wrong. I would buy them, I'll be happy with any of them, but I really like the classical shape more of this bicycle. So what do you think of this bike? I've given you my opinion. It's something that I really love, I've really enjoyed over the years, and I'm going to continue enjoying over many more years. But let me know in the comments below if you have anything to say, and I'd like to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.